Imagine arriving on a distant island after crossing the Atlantic Ocean in a fragile wooden ship. Months at sea. Endless water in every direction. Storms, sickness, fear, and hope. Hope that somewhere beyond the horizon there is land where a new life can begin. In the year 1587, more than 100 English settlers made that journey. They traveled across the ocean to a remote island off the coast of what is now North Carolina. Their mission was simple, at least in theory: build the first permanent English settlement in the New World. But something happened on that island. Something strange enough that more than 400 years later, historians still argue about it. Because when help finally returned, every single colonist had disappeared. No bodies, no ruins burned by war, no sign of struggle, just an empty settlement, and a single mysterious word carved into wood: CROATOAN. To understand how an entire colony could vanish, we need to go back to the late 1500s. At that time, England was desperate to compete with Spain for power in the Americas. Spain had already established massive colonies across the New World, bringing gold, silver, and unimaginable wealth back to Europe. England wanted the same. One of the men leading that effort was Sir Walter Raleigh, an English nobleman and explorer. Raleigh believed England needed its own settlements in the Americas, both to expand its power and to challenge Spanish dominance. So he organized expeditions to the coast of North America. The area they chose was a mysterious island called Roanoke. The first attempts to settle there did not go well. Earlier expeditions had struggled with starvation, hostile conditions, and conflict with local tribes. But Raleigh was determined to try again. In 1587, a new group of settlers sailed across the Atlantic. This time, the group was not made of soldiers or explorers. These were families, men, women, and children, people hoping to build a real community. Leading the expedition was a man named John White. White was an artist and navigator who had already traveled to the region before. He knew the land, the forests, and the coastal waters. The settlers arrived at Roanoke Island in the summer of 1587. At first, things seemed promising. They began rebuilding the small settlement left behind by earlier expeditions. Houses were repaired, gardens were planted, plans were made for a permanent colony, and then something remarkable happened. One of the settlers gave birth. Her name was Eleanor Dare, and her child became the first English baby born in the Americas. The baby girl was named Virginia Dare. For the settlers, it felt like a powerful sign of hope. A new generation beginning in a new world. But survival in the colony was far from easy. Food was scarce. Relations with some nearby tribes were tense, and the settlers quickly realized they needed more supplies from England if the colony was going to survive. So the colonists made a difficult decision. Governor John White would sail back to England to gather supplies and return as quickly as possible. White did not want to leave. His daughter Eleanor and his newborn granddaughter Virginia were among the settlers staying behind. But the colony needed help. So in late 1587, John White boarded a ship and began the long voyage back across the Atlantic. He expected to return within months, but history had other plans. When White reached England, the country was on the edge of war. Spain was preparing a massive invasion. The Spanish Armada. Every available ship in England was being prepared for battle. That meant there were no ships available to return to Roanoke. White was forced to wait. Months turned into years. 3 years passed before he was finally able to secure a ship and sail back to the colony. 3 years wondering whether his daughter and granddaughter were still alive. In 1590, White finally returned to Roanoke Island. As the ships approached the coastline, he must have felt a mixture of relief and dread. But when they landed, something was wrong. The settlement was completely silent. No voices, no smoke rising from cooking fires, no people. The houses were still standing, but they were empty. There were no signs of violence, no signs of battle. Everything simply looked abandoned. The settlers were gone. White and his crew began searching the area. They found something carved into a wooden post near the settlement. One word: CROATOAN. Nearby, the letters CRO were also carved into a tree. At first, this may not sound very mysterious. CROATOAN was the name of a nearby island. It was also the name of a Native American tribe that lived in the region. Before White had left years earlier, the settlers had agreed on a system. If they ever had to relocate, they would carve the name of their new location into wood as a message. If they were forced to leave under danger, they would carve a cross symbol nearby as a warning. But when White saw the word CROATOAN, there was no cross. That suggested the settlers had left voluntarily. Perhaps they had moved to CROATOAN Island. White desperately wanted to sail there immediately to search for them, but a violent storm hit the coast that same day. The ships were badly damaged. The crew refused to risk another voyage along the dangerous coastline, and just like that, John White was forced to leave the area. He never saw his daughter or granddaughter again. The fate of the Roanoke colonists was never confirmed. Over the centuries, historians and researchers have proposed many theories about what might have happened. Some believe the settlers integrated with nearby Native American tribes. There are historical accounts suggesting that later explorers encountered tribes with people who had European features, gray eyes, lighter skin. Other theories suggest the colony may have suffered famine and scattered into smaller groups across the mainland. Some researchers believe they attempted to relocate inland but were attacked or slowly died out. But despite centuries of investigation, no definitive evidence has ever been found. No confirmed graves, no preserved ruins, no clear record of their fate. Just an abandoned settlement, a carved word, and one of the most haunting mysteries in American history. Today, Roanoke is still known as the Lost Colony, a place where over 100 people simply disappeared from the historical record. Sometimes history leaves behind ruins, artifacts, or written accounts that explain what happened. But sometimes, history leaves only silence, and a single word carved into wood: CROATOAN. Even after more than 400 years, the mystery of the lost colony of Roanoke remains unsolved, and somewhere along the quiet forests and shifting coastlines of North Carolina, the truth may still be waiting to be discovered.